You're listening to the Leaping Cholla podcast recorded in the Wrong Mountain Yurt in the Sonoran Desert.
I am falling away from this world. I am falling away from this world. You are calling me.
Here we are. We decided we have no small talk. We did just watch the moon rise. That was really fun.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Still there staring at us. It's a beautiful night with almost a full moon, I guess. Full moon last night.
And yesterday we were driving, so we actually saw the moonrise like a few
times.
We're
on one side of the mountain range, and we saw the moon rise over the mountain range, and we drove around the mountain range, and we saw it rise again.
And then we got home and we saw it rise again, right? That happened one other time.
It did,
we saw 3 rises. It was pretty cool. But this was special because we just were sitting and looking at it.
Yep.
Yeah, the moon's
And it happened the second you walked out from putting our son to sleep. It was sweet.
That was great timing, yeah.
So we're reading Contributions to Philosophy, the event, and we're on section 35, right? Page 61.
So I think we're on 62. Yeah, 6235. You have the Kindle, so it might be a tiny bit different.
Okay, yeah, but that's
around
section 35 called the event.
The event.
So let's go for it.
Great. Meditation on the path. 1. What is inceptual? Sorry. Start over. Meditation on the path. 1. What inceptual thinking is. 2. How the other beginning is carried out as beyng silence. Quote, the event, end quote, would be the right title for the, quote, work, which can only be prepared here. For this reason, the title must instead be Contributions to Philosophy. The, quote, work, the self-developing edifice stemming from a turning back to the protruding ground.
Yeah.
End of section.
End of section. Little meditation here on this book, which is called Contributions to Philosophy, as he says.
Of the event.
But then in parentheses is of the event. And he seems to be saying here, so this we're meditating on a path in this book. We're meditating on what inceptual thinking is versus regular thinking. And we're meditating on how the other beginning, as opposed to the first beginning, is carried out as bearing silence. Now, bearing silence reminds me of bearing witness, but in this case, it's bearing silence. The event would be the right title for the work, which can only be prepared here. So the work can only be prepared.
In the event? Or what does he mean by here?
Here in this book.
Oh, okay.
Therefore, the title must instead be Contributions to Philosophy.
I don't quite get that.
Yeah, well, I think he's saying that the work of this book should be titled The Event.
Okay.
But the event is actually something that this book is here to prepare, to get ready, to find, to formulate. So the book is not, in a sense, the finished event or the completed event. It's the preparing of the event. So I guess he feels it would be a little wrong to call this book The Event, as if the book were telling you what the event is, when really the event is a meditation on trying to figure out what the event is and how to get to the event. So it's called Contributions to Philosophy. What is the work? The work of this book, it is a self-developing edifice stemming from a turning back to the protruding ground. So it's a building up, self-developing building up that comes about from a turning back or looking back or reverting to the protruding ground of the past, of history, of the first beginning. Yeah, cool. Yeah? Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, shall we?
36.
36. Language and the inventive thinking of beyng. In ordinary language, which is ever more comprehensively used up today and degraded through idle chatter, the truth of beyng cannot be said. Can this truth be said immediately in the least, if all language is indeed the language of beings? Or can a new language be devised for beyng? No. Even if it could, and perhaps without artificially formed words, such language would not be one that speaks. All saying must allow the co-emergence of a capacity to hear it. Both saying and hearing must be of the same origin. Thus, all that matters is this one thing: to say the most nobly emerged language in its simplicity and essential force, to say the language of beings as the language of beyng. This transformation of language presses into realms which are still closed to us because we do not know the truth of beyng. Therefore, something is said of the, quote, renunciation of pursuance, end quote, of the, quote, clearing of concealment, end quote, of the, quote, appropriating event, end quote, and of, quote, Dasein. And this is not a mere plucking of truths out of words, but is the opening of the truth of beyng in this sort of transformed saying. CF Prospect 38, Bearing Silence.
Yeah, so, pretty straightforward section. I mean, ordinary language is the language of being, as he says here, the language of being. So how can we talk about beyng using this language? Should we just invent a new language? Well, no, because language is not just something you invent, because it needs to be something that is also heard, and an invented language would not be understood by anyone and not heard. So saying and hearing are of the same origin, so that doesn't work. So instead, he says what we're going to do is we're going to use this standard language, this language of being. So we're going to say things like renunciation of pursuance, clearing of concealment, appropriating event, Dasein. These are all very sort of catchphrases for his system, meditating on the path of the event. And we're gonna, out of them, we're gonna find some kind of truth of beyng in them somehow. He doesn't exactly say how. Well, I mean, he does say here. We're going to say the most nobly emerged language in its simplicity and essential force, to say the language of beings as the language of beyng. That's what we're going to do. So we're going to kind of press the language of beings, which is the language we have, to become the language of beyng. This transformation of language presses into realms which are still closed to us because we do not know the truth of beyng. So at least this transformation, though, is going to press into realms that are still closed to us. And somehow through this language, this using the language of beings to talk about beyng, we're going to create the opening of the truth of beyng in this sort of transformed saying. Not quite sure how that's supposed to happen, or he doesn't get too specific about how that's going to work, but it's a noble claim. Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts about that? I mean,
not really. So it's basically just that we're going to use the language we have about beings to try to describe beyng and discover and discuss.
That's very well summarized, yes.
Yeah. That makes sense. I
mean, I think at least, this the uplifting part of that section is that he's claiming we can get to beyng through the language of beings.
Yeah.
That's possible.
Yeah.
Which would seem to also, in a sense, be a theory of language and the way language generates or serves thought, which is such that, we can use language to, in a sense, get outside of it, and get outside of its dependency on being and get at beyng, which is an interesting, the words he uses here is transformation, getting more explicit and more descriptive and more intricate about that transformation and how that's actually supposed to work and what the difference is between talking about beings and talking about beyng would be interesting, but we do not have that here. So I think we should keep going.
Yeah. 37. Beyng and its bearing silence. Cygetics.
Yeah, we looked up that word, didn't we?
Yeah, it was logic of silence, I
The
believe.
logic of silence, exactly. And it's also like a...
Company.
Yeah, it's an internet.
Whose
it's a
motto
company
is
on the
logic
internet.
of silence.
His motto is logic of silence, and I think they're like they're like spies or something. It says like, we'll spy on your loved one and make sure that none of your information's being stolen or something. Or no, it's like, or we study the way silence works. I don't know. All right, go ahead.
Okay. 37. Beyng and its bearing silence. Cygetics. The basic question, how does beyng essentially occur? Bearing silence is the prudent lawfulness of the silence-bearing activity. Then the Greek word, to be silent. Bearing silence is the, quote, logic of philosophy, inasmuch as philosophy asks the basic question out of the other beginning. Philosophy seeks the truth of the essential occurrence of beyng, and this truth is the intimating, resonating concealment, the mystery of the event, the hesitant withholding. We can never say beyng itself immediately, especially if beyng is leaped to in the leap. For every saying arises from beyng and speaks out of the truth of beyng. All words, and thereby all logic, stand under the power of beyng. The essence of, quote, logic is therefore cygetics, in which the essence of language is first grasped as well. Yet, quote, cygetics is a label offered only for the use of those who still think by, quote, pigeonholing, and who believe they possess knowledge only if what is said has been categorized.
Yeah. So here's the basic question. How does beyng essentially occur? It's a good question, especially with what we just read about this apparent transformation of language. So in order to understand this transformation of language, the language of beings into the language of beyng, we have to ask ourselves, how does beyng essentially occur? And he says, bearing silence, which in a sense is, I think, we could probably consider bearing silence something like being silent over time, probably. And I think like there is the sense of bearing witness. Bearing witness is a phrase we use when you are present at an event and even involved in an event, or you have a role in that event, to bear witness, and you are going to be someone who could be called upon to verify that that event occurred and talk about how it was, what it was like to be there. So bearing silence, I think, could be very joyously linked up with that idea of bearing witness, but it's bearing silence. So being wrapped up in the event, being present at the event, being called to be a representative of the event, yet what you're doing vis-a-vis the event is being silent, letting the event be. So bearing silence is the prudent lawfulness of the silence-bearing activity. So again, with links to bearing witness, so to be silent, bearing silence means the prudent lawfulness of that. So it's prudent and it's lawful. It's involved in the sort of the I would almost say the existential rules of the event. Bearing silence is the logic of philosophy, inasmuch as philosophy asks the basic question out of the other beginning. Bearing silence is the logic of philosophy. So that's a lot to say. Philosophy has been searching for logic. People have been proposing philosophical logics, logical philosophies, talking about logic vis-a-vis philosophy, trying to make philosophy logic, etc. Heidegger comes here and says, the logic of philosophy is just bearing silence. So when you're doing philosophy or engaging in the logic of philosophy, what you're doing is bearing silence. In a sense, you're asking the basic question, which again is how does beyng essentially occur out of the other beginning. So you're engaged in the other beginning, and you're asking the basic question, how does beyng essentially occur, by bearing silence.
And the other beginning is what we're trying to make happen.
That's right. What this book is trying to institute. So I think, the important thing there is to say that we think that philosophy is thinking, and we think that philosophy is cogitation, and we think that logic is symbols and formulas and propositions. We think of philosophy as a chatting understanding, or a chat-filled search to understand. Heidegger has a totally different take on it. The logic and philosophy are actually just be silent, bear silence vis-a-vis the event, and you will be doing philosophy. Philosophy seeks the truth of the essential currents of beyng. Yes, it does. And this truth is the intimating, resonating concealment of the event. So the truth of the essential currents of beyng is the intimating, resonating concealment of the event, which is the hesitant withholding. That's a very mysterious sentence. Do you have any insights into that sentence?
Is he saying the event is the hesitant withholding?
He does seem to be saying that. Withholding probably just means that what we think of it as an event is just a taking place. Taking place is a nice synonym of event in English.
What is withholding?
Withholding just means to...
Well, I know what it means. I wonder what the German is, because it's kind of there are different ways to...
Yeah, I don't have the German
that.
book down here. I don't have the German book here right now. I'll look that up.
Yeah.
I'll look that up. I was going to say, I think withholding probably just means, in some sense, staying put.
Right.
Or holding on to. And in a sense, you can think of the event in the flow of time as that. Like an event is it's like a congregating around, or a grasping. It's like a little knot in the string of time, and it's hesitant. I don't know why it's hesitant.
Nice. Well, I think it's... I don't know. I think of that as like not aggressive. It's like a light or a light touch or a...
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Thought.
Yeah.
Or not thoughtful. That's the wrong word. I don't know.
Tenuous almost.
Tenuous, yeah. A light holding.
Yeah, that's right. And he says here, the truth of the essential occurrence of beyng is, and here's this phrase,
Yeah.
the intimating, resonating concealment, the mystery.
So that's the mystery, the intimating resonance.
Yeah, and so, I mean, that, things are concealed from us,
Yeah.
but yet their concealment resonates and intimates certain things, and this becomes the mystery.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're seeking truth, you're thinking philosophy, you're bearing silence, you're searching for truth and essential occurrences, what you're facing are mysteries, concealments, but yet they intimate and they resonate, and that's how your bearing silence can come to learn about them. So yeah, that all makes sense. We can never say bang itself immediately. We cannot say bang. I think, I think.
Sorry, can I
Yeah,
say one more thing
no,
about that
please, go
prior
ahead,
one?
yeah.
So, sorry, I kind of lost it. I just think it's interesting that those two things came together, right? That the mystery and the event came together, I guess.
they
That he
seem
put
to be
them in the
part of this formula. Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
pretty lovely, but it's also
Yeah.
a little
No, I agree. I mean, I think
abstract.
it is.
Or I don't know
Well,
if
think
abstract's
about
the
it this
word.
way, right? Like if you're looking at existence and you're trying to figure out what there is,
Yeah.
right? What is there?
Yeah,
What is
yeah.
there? Well, the only thing that can really be there, Heidegger would say, is events. Being is not there. Being abandoned by being is not there, but bang is there, and bang is the event. And the event is a hesitant withholding. But that event is not just ultimately, completely, totally present and known to you.
Yeah.
It's always shrouded in a certain kind of mystery that intimates things and resonates. It's slightly concealed. So this is in a way, it's a topology of the act of philosophy, or the act of trying to know. Right?
Yeah, it's nice because it feels really accurate, because it does feel often like it's a mystery.
Yeah.
And like a trying to understand and the frustration of not understanding. But if you're kind of just like, oh, it's a resonating mystery, that's what it's supposed to be. That's a sort of different perspective on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very much yes.
Okay.
We can never say bang itself immediately. And I think in English, normally we would say something, we can never speak bang itself immediately. So again, we're back to this idea of the transformation of the language of beings into the language of bang. We don't speak bang immediately, especially if bang is leaped to in the leap. See, you can only get to bang by leaping to it. So you can't speak it. You can only kind of leap to it. For every saying arises from bang and speaks out of the truth of bang. So speech arises out of bang and speaks out of the truth of bang. So bang has a very specific relationship with speaking and with language. It's the origin of speaking.
You think all speech comes out of bang?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean,
Interesting.
yeah, that's right. What is language? What are words? This is the big topic, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's so many, layers to language and cultural forms and, dictational dynamics and delimited meaning places and form and methods through language. And I think, but where does language emerge out of?
Right.
It emerges out of bang. Now it might, after its emergence and its use and its what as he calls it's degrading into idle chatter, right? It might sort of then it starts to deal with beings, but it emerges originally out of beyng. So I think here what's interesting here is he's saying that if we really, in a sense, look at the organic history of language and where speaking comes from and speaks out of, it comes out of beyng. I mean, I'm kind of reminded of, again, we have like a 2-year-old right now who's learning language, and it's just very clear to me that like language is something that is put onto pre-linguistic experiences and cognitions, right? Like we've talked about it before, like, like good job, right? He says good job all the time, right? Good job. How does he know? Like, how did he ever extrapolate?
Right.
How did he know that, like, when we say, okay, he takes a toy and he puts it in his tub and we say good job. But then he goes and he does something that's completely different than putting a toy in a tub. Like he, climbs a little hill, gets to the top and says, good job. So obviously he has linked these two events together through something.
Yeah.
What is that linkage? Is it, oh, I feel I've made an effort. I've achieved something. I've gone from A to B, but yet he doesn't have the language for any of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a pre-linguistic place that he lives in.
Yeah.
That words emerge out of and speak out of the truth of. And that place he lives in, where putting a toy in a bin and climbing a mountain are cognizably similar things, is beyng.
Yeah, that's nice.
All words and thereby all logic stand under the power of beyng. Yeah. The essence of logic is therefore seigetics, in which the essence of language is first grasped as well. So again, seigetics, as the logic of silence, is actually, in a sense, the science of beyng. Because, again, I think putting a toy in the bin and climbing a hill, they exist in silence. They exist because before language is silence. So that gets that the essence of logic is therefore seigetics, the science of silence, the science of silence, the logic of silence, in which the essence of language is first grasped as well. So the essence of language is this beyng place that this 2-year-old lives in, that he's plopping words onto. Yet seigetics is a label offered only for the use of those who still think by pigeonholing and who believe they possess knowledge only if what is said has been categorized. So,
So then he's like undercutting.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, he's like, science of logic is not
really
the way to think about it.
Yeah.
But it's, if you need that
to
kind of
categorize.
Yeah, if you need that kind of
That's
thing,
funny.
then if that's the kind of person you are, then you can
That's
have.
interesting, because I've never been crazy about that word.
Yeah, right.
Been a little like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a little, well, maybe because it has the word logic in it. So you're kind of like, what is that even? How do you even have
Yeah.
logic and silence? What is that?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, do we keep going or not?
I don't know. What do you think? I mean, there was something you wanted to talk about tonight, but we could. Let's keep going a little bit, because I feel like he's still talking about the same thing.
He is.
Yeah, so I think we're still on.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the next section is called Bearing Silence. So
Yeah.
let's keep going, because maybe we'll just
Yeah, he's
get
continuing.
out of this theme.
38, bearing silence. The expression, quote, seigetics, a foreign borrowing, is meant in correspondence to, quote, logic, ontology, only as transitionally retrospective and in no way as part of a mania to replace, quote, logic. Since the question of beyng and of the essential occurrence of beyng stands, the questioning is therefore still more original and accordingly can even less be pent up in an academic pigeonhole and suffocated. We can never say beyng event immediately, and therefore not even immediately in the sense of the heightened, quote, logic of dialectics. Every saying already speaks out of the truth of beyng and can never immediately leap over itself to beyng itself. The laws of bearing silence are higher than those of any logic.
Yeah, so he's just being really cautious here with the phrase logic and saying, I'm not saying that we develop a logic of silence, like with symbols and rules and propositional formulas, etc., because that's just not the way it works. Because inevitably, language speaks out of the truth of beyng and can never leap over itself into beyng itself. So language, in a sense, keeps us from beyng. Silence brings us to beyng. Language keeps us from beyng. And the laws of bearing silence are higher than those of any logic. So he's just really saying, let's not go developing logics here. We're not creating a mania. This is not part of a mania to replace logic with a logic of silence. It's more, he's just using the phrase to say that to be appropriated by beyng, to understand beyng, to leap into beyng is something outside of language. And in a sense, this logic of silence is best not thought of as a logic. It's more best thought of as an experience of silence that relates us to beyng and the event outside of language. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Ultimately, however, bearing silence is not an anti-logic, for the latter is indeed a fortiori a logic and wants to be one, but is simply unable to. On the other hand, the will and knowledge of bearing silence have a completely different orientation, and just as little does bearing silence have to do with the, quote, irrational, with, quote, symbols and, quote, ciphers. All this presupposes the previous metaphysics. Bearing silence, however, does include the logic of beingness, just as the basic question incorporates the guiding question.
Yeah, so he's kind of going farther than what I just said, or going beyond, riffing off that. He's saying, I'm not trying to develop an anti-logic. I'm not suggesting a logic. I'm not suggesting an anti-logic. But bearing silence does have a completely different orientation than logic or anti-logic. But bearing silence is also not just the irrational, or symbols and ciphers. Symbols, maybe you could think of like Jung, the symbols of the unconscious. All this presupposes the previous metaphysics. In other words, all this irrationality, symbols, ciphers, this is just all still stuck in the previous metaphysics. However, he says, bearing silence does include the logic of beingness, just as the basic question incorporates the guiding question. So the basic question, again, is how does beyng essentially occur?
And what's the guiding question?
Yeah, I don't remember what the guiding question is.
Embarrassing.
I mean,
the question of the beings of beings, the question of the being of beings.
Yeah. I was going to say it had to do. I know it has to do with being. Yeah. So, the guiding question is the question of the being of beings, and the basic question is how does beyng essentially occur? So, or what is beyng? In a sense, the guiding question is what is being, and the basic question is what is beyng, right? And what is beyng incorporates the question of what is being, just the way bearing silence incorporates the logic of beingness. So, if you're talking about beyng, or seeking beyng, or thinking about beyng, being is involved in that somehow, because beyng has a relationship with being. And in a sense, beyng has being, and being has beyng, or being is beyng. Yeah.
Bearing silence.
How did you,
I just looked back a page and I had an underlined guiding question.
that was fast.
I know.
You are a
was
superstar student, man. Wow.
I had underlined it. I don't know, man.
No, you're very thorough. It's impressive.
Okay. Bearing silence arises out of the essentially occurring origin of language itself.
Yeah, same thing I just said. There's a silence prior to language, and the bearing silence arises out of that essentially occurring origin of language. Yeah.
The basic experience is not the assertion or the proposition.
Yeah, again, the logic is a practice of assertions and propositions, and our basic experience is not that.
Yeah. Nor, consequently, is it the principle, whether, quote, mathematical or, quote, dialectical.
Yeah, the basic experience is not the principle, the rule, the law, whether it's a mathematical or a dialectical law. That's not our basic experience. Yep, go ahead.
Instead, it is the holding itself back of restraint against the hesitant self-withholding in the truth, clearing of concealment of the plight, from which arises the necessity of the decision.
Okay.
Whew.
So I'll piece all that together. The basic experience is the holding itself back of restraint. So the basic experience is a kind of restraint against the hesitant withholding, the hesitant self-withholding in the truth of the plight, from which arises the necessity of decision. So out of all this, we arrive at the necessity of decision. Now what is it? What is it? The basic experience. So our basic experience in life is holding ourselves back in a kind of restraint against. So we're holding back against something, against the hesitant self-withholding in the truth of the plight. I can't make sense of that.
Hold on. The hesitant self-withholding was, we talked about that. That was earlier. Where was that? Oh, yeah. Oh, the event is the hesitant withholding.
Yeah, but we have hesitant self-withholding.
Yeah. The holding.
So I think if we move backwards, so you have the truth of the plight. So in our basic experience, we have the truth of the plight. So
yeah.
Let's think back to our son's existence pre-language, right? The truth of the plight is what one must do or be doing, or what's happening to one, what one is engaged in. So he's climbing up a hill, right? The truth of his plight is that he's climbing up a hill, right? And our basic experience is the holding itself back of restraint against the hesitant self-withholding. I'm drawing a blank. I have no idea what that.
It's a lot of
restraints and hesitance and withholdings and holding itself back. I mean, it's like five different holding, restraint, hesitant, self-withholding.
Holding back restraint.
But what's this against?
Yeah. Self-withholding in the truth. Holding. It is holding back restraint.
I mean,
holding back restraint, holding itself back.
Think about this. Think about this. If if he's climbing a hill, right? He's not doing everything else, right? So he's holding himself back, right? And in a sense, against could mean kind of like holding yourself against a wall, right? So it's not against as in
Negative,
antagonistic.
Yeah, right.
So he's holding himself in the event, right? Which is the truth of his plight. Now that makes sense to me.
That does make sense, yeah.
So in a sense, it's almost saying like he's engaged, right, in an activity. So engaged is synonymous with restraint, which makes sense. In an activity, activity is synonymous with event, which makes sense. And in the truth of the plight. So the truth of the plight is that the truth is he's going up a hill, and that is his plight. Right? And the clearing of concealment, which is the truth, is that it is revealed to him that the hill is to be there and it is to be gone up. That is a fact. That is a truth. Right? Yeah. So, and from which arises the necessity of the decision. So what's the decision? Are you going to go up the hill or are you not going to go up the hill?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's and this is the basic experience that Heidegger says he's describing. This is how we experience life as our engagement with activities that have been revealed to us as our plight that we can choose or not. Now that, I think I've simplified it into that. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's weird. To me, it makes sense where, from truth on, where it says in the truth of the plight from which arises the necessity of the decision.
Well, that's yeah.
That makes sense.
The part before it, yeah.
It's the part before it but you're right. You did just do it, but you said restraint is what'd you say restraint was?
I use the word engaged with. I said I think that what you can do is you can say holding itself back of restraint could be synonymous with the word engaged. Against means in.
Right.
And the hesitant self withholding means an activity, an action, an event. Yeah. So you are engaged in an event.
Well, that is an event. That's what he said earlier.
That's right.
Yeah, interesting. Huh. Wow.
And this is the basic experience out of which language emerges.
Yeah.
And if we bear silence toward this basic experience, we will learn about it.
Yeah.
We will understand it before language.
Yeah.
Without language. And in that way, we will come in contact with beyng.
Yeah.
It's very...
Yes. Yeah.
It's very intense.
It is. I feel like we should try to finish this section.
Please.
Right?
This section? Oh, yeah, we can.
Yeah, no,
go ahead. You're right.
When this restraint reaches words, what is said is always the event.
Right. I climbed the hill.
Yeah. Good job.
Good job. Exactly.
But to understand this saying means to carry out the projection and leap of knowledge into the event.
Yeah, we project onto the event. We take a leap of knowledge. Yep.
The saying that bears silence is what grounds. Its word is not by any means merely a sign for something quite other. What it names is what is meant, but the, quote, meaning assigns only as Dasein, i.e. in thinking and questioning.
Yeah, so in a sense, it's like the word is not just a sign for something. The word names what is meant, and the meaning assigns only as the meaning, in a sense, emerges out of the thinking and questioning that is Dasein. So he's trying to set up a kind of a different relationship between event and language, or event and word here, and saying that out of the event, the language comes forth, and the words are not just symbols, but they're actually born out of the event. Yeah.
Yeah. Bearing silence and questioning. Essential questioning as placing into decision of the essence of truth.
Yep. So questioning is essential questioning that takes place in bearing silence, and in questioning, basically applies decisions to the essence of truth. Yep.
Seeking after beyng, the original finding in the original seeking.
Yep. So we seek after beyng. It's the original finding and the original seeking. Yep. That's good. Yeah.
Seeking, already holding oneself in the truth, in the open realm of the self-concealing and self-withdrawing. Seeking originally as the basic relation to the hesitant withholding. Seeking as questioning and yet bearing silence.
Yeah. So seeking is seeking. When you seek, you hold yourself in the truth. You hold yourself in the open realm of the self-concealing and self-withdrawing. You seek a basic relationship to the hesitant withholding, which is again the event. You seek a basic relationship with the event. You question and you seek. Yeah.
The one who seeks has already found.
Yay, with an exclamation point.
Yeah.
That's maybe like the second exclamation point in this book, right?
Yeah, I think so.
The one who seeks has already found, meaning, in a
Just
way,
by
the
seeking,
search is the discovery.
Yeah. And the original seeking is this grasping of what has already been found. Namely, the grasping of what is self-concealing as such.
Yeah, so you find the self-concealing. In seeking, you find the concealed, and in finding the concealed, you have found it. Even if it's concealed. Go ahead.
Well, is he saying, so it's like the original seeking.
The original seeking is this grasping of what has already been found. Yeah, so
it's sort of like, in a way, it's like, I don't know, being able to put words to an experience or something.
Yeah.
Like being able to grasp.
Yeah.
Or like figure out what it is that you found.
That's right. I think the original seeking would grasp what the experience was before language.
Right. Yes, that's right.
And then words would emerge out of that original grasp.
Yeah. No, I mean, putting words to it is a terrible way to put it. But
that's right. Yeah. Letting words happen out of it.
Yeah. Or just understanding it.
Yeah.
Maybe?
Understanding it.
Yeah.
And then having words emerge out of that understanding. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas ordinary seeking finds in the first place and has found when it stops seeking.
Yeah. So, I think he's saying that. So in a certain sense, what ordinary thinking does, ordinary seeking, is it finds something and it says, look, I found it. And so it stops seeking. But this original seeking that he's talking about, he says, don't stop seeking. When you stop seeking and say you found it, you haven't found it. The seeking is the finding.
Therefore, the original finding is sheltered in the original sheltering, precisely as seeking qua seeking.
Yeah, seeking is finding, finding is seeking, yeah.
Right. To honor what is most question-worthy, to abide in the questioning steadfastness.
Yeah, to abide in the questioning, to never stop asking questions. And again, that reminds me of something I mentioned to you about in this introduction to the basic writings of Heidegger that I'm reading now. Hannah Arendt talks about how when he was a young professor, the thing that was most dazzling about his lectures and seminars were that just the questions kept coming, and he kept asking deeper and more interesting questions and more questions. And she just said nobody had ever really heard anybody sort of lecture that way. And lecturing was up to before that just a transmission of information. And Heidegger was just standing up there just going deeper and deeper with questions and questions, never stop questioning. That is philosophy. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. We did a bunch of sections.
We did. We're almost done with the book. No, not at all. So I knew what we were going to talk about now.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about it before the reading, but I knew what it was. But I hadn't read any of this, and I'm now excited because I think that what we just read applies to what we're about to talk about.
Awesome.
As usual. So why don't you go ahead and integrate us to what is to be discussed?
Well, so my dad emailed me an article in the New York Times, which is a review of a movie that came out called
Night Bitch, I think.
Night Bitch.
Yeah.
And
Which we haven't seen the movie.
we haven't seen it. I think I watched the trailer. Did you watch the trailer?
No. I don't do that.
The trailer is like
No.
a whole nother level. We might need to pause it so you can watch it.
No,
and
I
be
don't need to do that.
marked
No,
for life.
No, excuse me.
Anyways, yeah, and so I mean, I honestly, I skimmed it, but like I felt
Skimmed the article?
Yeah.
You didn't read it? I read it.
Well, good.
Well, go ahead.
I felt that in what I was reading that it was like, you know, it's trying to be positive about motherhood. That's like, I guess the idea is that it's
The movie.
the movie is a positive take on motherhood, but it's also classified as a comedy horror or something. So it's I don't know, it's dark as well. Yeah. So
Because it's
didn't-
essentially a werewolf movie in a way.
yeah.
Werewolf movies
Right.
were where guys turned into werewolves, which are wolves, which are dogs, really.
Right.
So in this,
That's why-
she turns into a dog.
And it's
They
a
don't
bitch
call
'cause
it-
it's a female dog.
Yeah, and they don't call it a werewolf. They call it a dog, but it's basically the werewolf
that
motif.
makes sense. Yes. Yeah, and I'm reading it, and I think the reason I started skimming was I didn't really like it. I was like, I don't know. I didn't know what to make of it. Because
Well, yeah, why didn't you like it?
well, honestly, I felt like it was, I don't know, it was pulling at my I don't know, heartstrings in a way that or
your
mothering
heartstrings.
strings
Yeah,
or
your
something.
mothering
Like it was trying to tell me how in a way mothering should or shouldn't be. And
Yes.
I just kind of didn't feel comfortable with that. Even
Yes.
though I knew that it was, you know, as we've said before, like kind of like a well-intentioned, like, you know, they're saying it's a very positive take apparently on motherhood, like an empowering take on motherhood. But to me, as reading it, I didn't really feel that. So I didn't fully, but maybe you can enlighten us more as to what it actually said.
Well, it's not a super complicated article, so it has various elements it has like 3 elements that hold it together. And the first element is it's saying that in the zeitgeist right now, in the culture, which is really the culture of memes and feeds, there's a lot of negative takes on mothering. That mothering is exhausting, that mothering is expensive, that mothering can be oppressive.
That you need to check in on the mother.
That you need to check
You need
in
to
on the
text your
mothers,
mother,
that mothering
text
is
the
really
mother.
hard, that mothering is a kind of death.
Mm-hmm.
That there's a lot of people who, I think it says something like, you know, over 50% of people under some age say they're not interested in being a parent. And the two reasons given are, in a sense, I think one is that it's expensive, and the other is that climate. I think, right? You know, I mean,
Right,
the
yeah,
environment. I mean, those are the two big reasons. So there's a negativity about the future, negativity about the culture,
Right.
negativity about the world, where the world's headed, bringing people into such an ugly world, etc. So the article makes the point that there is just a lot of negativity around mothering being shared in the culture. And there are movies about how awful mothering can be, apparently. I haven't seen any of them, but it mentions some of them. And then it says, but then we have this movie, which,
Right.
you know,
By turning into a werewolf, she gets power back somehow.
yeah, it seemed like it. I mean, so apparently she is kind of a beleaguered mother, right? Mm-hmm. I can't remember what her husband's situation is or partner
I
situation.
think
She
he
doesn't-
works.
Yeah, okay. So she's a home alone.
She's at home alone.
Home alone with the kid all the time. And she starts to turn into a dog, which the writer seems to intimate is a metaphor for kind of like, you know, how mothering kind of, I don't know, sort of devolves you in a way, right? And turns you into just like an animal, like the puppies roll up and suck on your teats, and you know what I
Yeah.
mean, like.
That's actually one of the things I've heard a few times from like mothers. Just like, I just feel like a cow. It's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
a phrase
Cow.
like that.
Exactly. And so, you know, I think that's a metaphor for that happening to her.
Mm-hmm.
But then the article seems to imply that in her becoming a mother dog and having mother dog experiences with her child, the writer of this article seems to intimate that the movie is also transmitting a positive message about parenting, that there's an animal connection between mother and child that can be wonderful and playful and kind of enlightening and kind of joyful. And that there's something nice about mothering because it is so animalian and so basic and in a sense so crazy, right? Like you become a child yourself, your child eats you alive, you know, and that and you can have a negative take on all that, but you can also have a take that is like, yeah, that's what's kind of insane and wild and wonderful about it. Like it's life.
Totally, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what the article. That's how the article is structured, and you know, I think it says something like. I think the last sentence implies that like the horror stuff and the dog, and is all the clickbait part of it. That's just there to like sell the movie, but. There's art in the movie, she says, as opposed to the clickbait, and the art is that the movie somehow seems to say that motherhood can be joyful. So yeah, but I am very curious as to, and you kind of intimated that right now, like why the article bothered you. And I think what I heard you say was that the article, and this is where I think, for me, is the into why the article is bothersome and how it relates to Heidegger. You felt that it was defining the mothering experience for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I have to be on one side or the other of it, or I'm supposed to
Yes.
feel this way or that, or
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and you know, I think that was kind of that's the article is very standard. It's
Yes,
very
it
much
is.
like
Yeah,
everything
totally.
else that is written
yes,
today.
yes.
And the qualities that it has, that it shares with everything else that's written, is that it presents, how should we say, cultural ideas, collective ideas, as things that are interesting to begin with, as things that are determinable, as things that ought to be transmitted as a reality that is somehow necessarily part of your experience. So, and this is all tied up with identity, meaning so you have a couple kids,
Yeah.
which makes you a mother.
Yes.
You then go and read this article, and this article is like, mothering can be joyful or mothering can be awful. And there's a lot of people who say mothering is awful, and they have all these reasons for it. And then this movie is talking about how mothering can be joyful. And I think your reaction, which I think is the right one, is, like, you're just peddling different sides of an identity in order to sell something. And in a sense, try to say things can be one way or another, when really they never are that. Like, you're not really talking about anything. Because, as you know, okay, you're a mother de facto because you have kids. But if you were to be forced to say, well, is mothering awful or is mothering joyful? I mean, what would your answer to that be? Right?
I mean,
Yeah. I mean, go ahead.
well, you want an answer?
No, I mean, yeah. I mean, if you want to answer that,
it's
before
a
you
bit of
answer it, let me
both,
say
obviously.
this. I think it's an absolutely useless and
It's
ridiculous
a terrible question. Yeah.
But if you'd like to, like, just because those words can be put into that order,
Right,
doesn't make it a good question. Anything can be asked.
Right.
But if you want it, but you can answer the question if you want, or you can also, if you want. But in asking the question, I want you to understand that I realize it's a terribly useless, stupid question.
Yeah.
But go ahead. What do you want to say?
Right. I mean, yeah, it forces me to engage in that by using those words. It forces me to kind of put myself or engage myself in that.
Well, it forces
scenario.
you to become an identity.
Yes. Yeah.
Which you're not.
Yeah. Right.
Because again, I think you're not a mother.
Yeah.
In a way. Like, in a lot of ways, you're not a mother. And some of the ways you're not a mother is when people write about mothers and motherhood and mothering and put adjectives on it and put experiences and put experiential descriptions onto it and do polls of other mothers and come up with statements about what mothering is. What's really important to understand is they're not talking about you.
Yeah.
And you might be, again, de facto a mother, but all that talk of mothers and mothering and what mother is has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
It has to do with an identity that they have placed onto you. But the bang of your mothering self is completely not related to any of that.
Yeah.
Now, for a lot of people, it is. Because most people have been completely swallowed by their identity. And so they get super wrapped up in this debate over whether mothering is awful or joyful.
Right.
Because they aren't really themselves anymore. They're just the identity of mother.
Right.
So they've left the bang of mothering and entered the being of mothering.
Yeah.
Right? The identity of mothering, not the experience of mothering, which is, as you know, every second it's something different. And to delineate it and to describe it is just horrible narrative marketing.
Yeah.
Identitarian narrative marketing enforcement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
like, I think it's really important that we stand up for ourselves and we say that all this shit that people write and talk about that is essentially dependent on discoursing over identities is as useless and fallacious and corrupt as the medieval church.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's as oppressive and
It's a
deluded
religion.
and false as
It's a
the
way.
medieval church.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's a religion. It's a way of a way
Yeah.
of believing.
Yeah.
A method of believing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
I also
Yeah.
don't. I also think you don't like the. I don't think you like being infused with the template of mothering, having something to do with like a tail growing out of your butt and growing fangs and becoming a dog.
yeah.
Like, and again, it's a horror film, I
I
believe.
know.
isn't
Yeah, I
it?
think so. Yes. That's
Like,
and
I
that's
would
another
imagine-
thing. I was like, well, what was the
Yeah.
horror part of this? in this
I imagine
review?
somewhere in there at night
Yeah.
she goes out as a dog
Right.
and like attacks people who are
Yeah.
like being evil.
Yeah.
There's always going to be like a she's a hero kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know, but
Yeah.
somehow it's a horror film. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what the werewolves do. The werewolves haunt the city.
Well, I think in the trailer I watched, there's also just a lot of like her husband is like, oh, well, I'd love to be at home, stay at home with the kids. And she just like looks like she wants to kill him, basically. There's just a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is, yeah. It's just, yeah, I think you said it very well. It just like really calls and plays on identity. And when you're trying to not identify with an identity, it feels like it's trying to like brainwash me or pull me in or like get me by the emotions to get in with it.
Yep.
Essentially, because obviously I should
Yep.
care about that. And my mother friends feel that way and everyone
Yeah.
feels that way. But I think, and it's making me think of other episodes where we've just talked about that it doesn't actually have any relation to me.
Yes.
all.
Exactly. Well, and
There's
I'm thinking of
proof it's talking about,
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I'm thinking of our son climbing a hill, it's like you're climbing a hill and
Yeah.
like somebody's going to come along and start throwing words on that
Right.
and telling you what you're doing, who you are, how you're doing it, blah, blah,
Right,
blah.
right.
And it's like you're having basic experiences, like Heidegger calls it, right?
Right.
You're in a state of withholding,
Right.
right? You're in a state of restraint.
Mm-hmm.
Restraint is interesting. So your practice, you're mothering children.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain restraint there, meaning you're restrained to that task.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just go wherever you want at any time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like locked into that task.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that task is an event. It's we're constantly changing, hesitant withholding. Right? And that's the truth of your plight. And that from which emerges the necessity of decision. Right? Are you deciding to do it again and again and again? Yes, you are. Because you could decide not to do it. But you're deciding for it. And that's your basic experience, as Heidegger describes it. But then these writers come along, right? And they just like throw all these words onto that about what you are, who you are, how you're doing it. Oh, and by the way, also how the collective has decided to describe what you're doing.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
As if that has anything to do with what you're doing.
Well, and I feel like the important decision at the end is that you decide to be a good mother, essentially.
Yes.
And I think that the narrative around it ends there, I would imagine, and it makes it there. And it's like when you're on your own, I think it gets to this question, which I've asked before, which is like, well, how do I know that I'm going to decide to be a good mother? Because that's what I want to do. But like, what if it doesn't take me there?
What if what doesn't take you there?
What if the process of operating outside of this narrative, and then in this narrative, she's a good mother. It takes her to being a good mother, right? The identity given to her. I would assume.
Yeah, but at the same, actually, there's a lot of identities floating around. One of the identities is half the women in our world now have decided not to be a mother.
That's true. Yeah. That's right.
And then so that leaves half the women who have decided to be mothers, and of those half of those have decided there's a lot of awfulness to it.
Right.
And that they want to talk about how awful it is all the time.
Right.
And some have decided it's just pure joy all the time.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. So, there's all these formulaic opinions about it being thrown around.
Right.
I guess I just wanted to point out that I think there's a lot of identities involved here.
That's true.
But you asked, how do I know I'll choose to be a good mother?
Yeah.
Well, I would say, in a sense, I don't think Heidegger talks about this, but I think we can maybe extrapolate from what he says. Your basic experience is your engagement in the activity that is the truth of your plight. So if we were to talk about raising a little boy like that, and now a little girl, right? Mm-hmm. You are having that basic experience all the time. Mm-hmm. And you're needing to decide vis-a-vis that plight in that engagement with that activity all the time. Mm-hmm. Like you're making that decision. In a way, it's hard to put a number on it, but it happens many, 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 many times every day. Mm-hmm. Doesn't it?
Yeah.
So language, which again comes after that basic experience, which in many ways is being bereft of being, provides you with the opportunity to conceptualize and imagine that you could decide not to be a good mother.
Yeah.
Because language is very untimeful, very abstract, very labile, very flexy, and it makes it seem as if things can just, like in language, dark can be light, and then light can be dark immediately.
Yeah.
But that's not actually the way the world works. But anything can be anything. Like I can ask questions that make no sense. I can say things that make no sense. I can say anything. I can say up is down. I can say left is right. Language allows this irresponsible and uninformed and unbasic way of just imagining the world. But if you look at your basic experience, which again, you're not deciding to have the basic experience. You're deciding what your relationship to the basic experience is. And I mean, in a way, it's unclear what you're deciding. I mean, you're making decisions within the basic experience, but the basic experience is there. And in the basic experience, you have decided n to the 5 millionth times to be a good mother. Only language provides you with the idea that after 25 billion decisions to be a good mother, you would all of a sudden decide not to be a good mother. Oh, and by the way, to continue to not be a good mother, you'd have to make that decision again and again and again and again and again and again. And that's why I say to you something like, well, how likely is it that that couch is going to turn into a butterfly?
Yeah.
When that couch has been having the basic experience of being a couch
Yeah.
again and again and again and again and again. So you have to remember what makes it possible for you to think that you could decide that,
Yeah.
and that thing that makes that possible really has nothing to do with your basic experience.
Yeah, that's well said. That's very well said. And I think that there's something in the article which is like offers a like false illusion
absolutely.
of security, I guess, or
what?
safety,
False what?
of safety or security or something.
What do you mean?
Like, I feel like there's something in the article, or there's a vibe in the article that's like, okay, well, if you like just agree and feel these things, then you're like at least a good enough mother, let's say.
Yeah.
That it's like if you come with us and you're maybe you're on this side, maybe you're on that side. She's probably on both at some point.
Yes.
But like, it's okay. You're still a good enough mother, I guess.
Yes.
So it's like if you come with us into this story.
Yes, exactly. And I would say that the danger of that is that it's a lie.
Yeah, right.
That it's an identity, that it's a formula, that it's a transplanted opinion.
Right.
And that's why you just have so many women who aren't really sure how they feel about mothering. That it is awful and it is joyful, and yet they also are watching memes that are giving them their opinion about it, and they've been completely disembraned of who they are and what's going on with them, of their basic experience, and they're just following the clique and the crowd and the memes and the articles and the movies, and they go watch the movie and they're like, oh, mothering is so joyful in this way and that way, and it's like, are you having any experiences, or are you just waiting around for these identitarian fishmongers to sell you some attitude about what you are?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. No. So it offers an illusion of safety, but it's really, when you hook onto those ideas, but in a way you haven't gotten to them from the basic experience, then they don't really hold.
That's
They're not
right.
grounded.
Exactly.
So then you're constantly like, oh, but is it joyful?
Exactly. Then you're constantly going
joyful.
back and forth.
It was joyful. Yes. Like I thought yesterday it was joyful, but like now I can't quite get there.
Yep. Because you don't know where to look for the answer anymore, because you just need to find another article.
Yeah. You just need another article or another movie, or maybe watch the movie again.
Exactly. Or another movie, the next movie. And then you're just back and forth because you've lost your basic experience.
Yeah. Until you find one that you're like, oh yeah, that's right. That's like pretty much joyful.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting.
I mean, the thing that I saw that I wanted to relate to that article in a certain way, and then I think we should wrap.
Yeah. We are mothers and fathers.
Exactly. Is, following up on our last thing, the Brian Thompson murder CEO, United Health, Luigi Mangione thing has kind of fizzled into what is now a lot of just what has become a new mantra on the left, which is that when you live in an unjust world, when the system is violence, then your response to that unjust, violent system can take on any form you want, and it is just.
Wow.
So essentially, what's happened is that people are saying, healthcare in America is a system of murder, and so responding to that through murder is just. And there are obviously a lot of problems with that idea. Because, to put it, I guess, basically, there are zero rules for describing what injustice is. And so anyone can say anything is unjust, which therefore justifies their violence. So, for instance, if you live at 1111 Mayberry Street and you have 2 bedrooms and 1 bath, but the people at 1212 Mayberry Street have 4 bedrooms and 2 baths, that's injustice. And you have every right to burn down their house and shoot them as they come down the street. So it just starts to get really obviously. You don't even, any idiot can see it, and then there are a lot of people who are far worse than an idiot. It's just terrible. And there's a little of that in this article.
Oh.
Now, nothing directly about United Health and all that, but there's a little of, for instance, she says something like, she drops the basic, cliches of like, in America today and in our world today and in these difficult times where daycare is really hard to find and healthcare is really hard to get and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And, it's the only phrase I can put for it is it's victim mentality.
Yeah.
I know it's been said that that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's a cliche itself, victim mentality. But it's definitely like the world is not. It's that attitude that the world is not serving you and your needs 100% as you define them needing to be served.
Yeah.
And because it's not serving those needs exactly as you determine it should be, it's unjust, it's difficult, it's awful, and it's reason to maybe not engage in one of life's most profound, beautiful activities like parenting. But it definitely, see, the identitarianism that is applied to mothering is also applied to America, applied to the world, applied to daycare options, applied to healthcare options. Now, I've lived in this world for a while. I'm on my 4th kid. And I can say that if I look around, I see everybody finding some kind of daycare.
Yeah.
I see everybody finding some kind of health care. Is the world a perfectly delivered service? Of course not. But it's become so easy to just simply mark the world and mark the country as having the identity of the unjust, the identity of the wrong, the deficient. Like, the world is not unjust, wrong, and deficient.
Yeah.
There is injustice, wrong, and deficiency in the world. But to say the world has those things as an identity is a totally different and deeper thing.
Yeah, totally. And I think that did annoy me. I was like, okay, like, boring. I don't know. Just like, what are you, like, you're not even saying anything. Boring. And like,
that's right.
And like, and they feel like platitudes. They don't seem like they're any sort of deep looking at any issues.
No.
I guess she's just trying to set the stage or something, but it's also just like,
it's cliche. It's not, it's the end of seeking. It's not beyng. It's ignoring all complexities.
Yeah.
It's peddling identities. It's peddling simplicities, reductionisms. It's just victim attitude bullshit.
Yeah.
And it's very, very common right now.
Yeah.
Super common.
Yeah, I mean, I don't read any, so this is the only story
Yeah.
I've read in a while,
Yeah,
but
no,
I can imagine
it's
that
just-
most probably
It's
started
nonstop,
like that.
nonstop,
Yeah.
nonstop. People know what the world is.
Yeah.
People know
Right.
exactly what the world is.
Right.
They are so ready to say the world is this, that, and the other thing. And you know what this, that, and the other thing always are? Something awful.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah,
massive,
totally.
horrible, vicious, violent deficiency that
Yeah.
is there to fuck them up again and again and again. Like that's just, it's nonstop that's what the world is.
Yeah.
And we're living in the richest country
Yeah.
ever to exist, where everyone is blessed with the most bounteous gifts
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
that anyone can imagine. But even that's an identity, you know, like
Yeah.
people have it hard, people have it good, people have it weird, people have it right, people have it wrong. Who's the world? What's the world? What's you? You know, again, it's what between the world and me, you know, wait, who are you? And what's the world? And who's unjust? And where's the injustice? And what's a corporation? Everyone works for a corporation. The corporation is evil, so everyone is evil. Yeah, maybe I'd agree. Maybe I'd agree with that. You know, I mean, it just goes the categories and the labels and the definitions and the fantasies and the identities are just. It's a giant market of deception and lies. And to put it into your article and say things like this woman says is shameful and disgusting.
Yeah.
It's not journalism. It's not philosophy. It's not truth. It's just lies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's whining and it's victimization and it's just having an attitude about the world.
And there's just no, like in that article, there was just no like real illuminating something or showing me something new or giving a new thought or a new perspective. It felt very like, okay, this side and this side,
That's
you
right.
know, and
it was echoing very rote sentiments.
yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think what's been lost in so much of this new, you know, complaining about the systems of violence is just how, I don't know, what I want to say is just like how amazing it is to like be alive and have basic experiences and be just like watching the moon rise.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just so démodé and out of vogue right now, you know. Everyone is so gripped in this war against the system.
Totally. Well, and it's such
And even
that
sorry, real quick, even that article was just like mothering was portrayed as part of a war against the system.
Yeah.
And the question was, do you enjoy the war or do you not enjoy the war?
Right.
But either way, you're going to be turned into a dog who's at war with somebody. Probably your husband, of course.
Yes.
Probably the way mothers are viewed, of course.
Yes.
Probably the way mothering makes you feel, of course. Probably healthcare, of course. And the daycare options, of course.
Yeah.
And the assumptions people have about mothers and the things people say about it's just like war.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, totally. That's well said. And I was just thinking, like, I think to be able to just sit and enjoy the moonrise is still like, it's hard. It's hard to just be able to sit for me in the basic experience and not, I guess that's where the restraint comes in, but not run off into some war that's like not anywhere near here. Right?
It's hard to watch the moonrise and bear silence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
That's the restraint.
Yeah. It was a good moonrise though, but it was weird. It was like literally just since we're talking about it, you know, watching it and I'd be like, okay, you know, I'd be like I'd be bearing silence and I'd like think of, I don't know.
Sure, of course. Well, that's the challenge of meditation.
Story or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess that's also part of why the stories are so addicting is they just they give your mind somewhere to go, or they give your
Yeah.
word somewhere to go or something.
Yeah, but also, I mean, spiritual maturity,
Yeah.
spiritual growth, spiritual evolution is practicing that bearing of silence and bearing more silence and becoming better at bearing silence and having more and more basic experiences that are bearing of silence and being even a little bit more better at having that silence and having those voices be a little less demanding.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Like, it happens.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to. I think we need to be like super oppressed by the idea that it's never perfect.
Yeah.
Of course, you're looking at the moon. The moon's beautiful, and then you think, "Oh God, am I going to get the $300 vacuum or the $500 vacuum?" You know what I mean? That happens.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you didn't watch the moonrise, though,
Right.
or enjoy it. You know,
Right.
like, you're a multi-vocal thing.
Yeah. That's
Voices
true.
are gonna come in your head, but they don't ruin. They don't negate other experiences.
Right. Well, and I think for me, the voices, like we've talked about, just tend to be really like drastic and like, and I feel, and we've talked about them. The word was the proprietary police, right? So I think there's kind of something there that is like when, like in having a basic experience, then that's like a very prime time for them to come in and be like, you shouldn't be doing that. That's not safe, or that's not
Absolutely.
good.
Well, they're opposed to basic experience because the more basic experiences you have, the less identitarian you are.
Yeah.
The less you're wrapped up in their definition of what you are, who you are, how things are for you.
Right.
The more the more you risk actually discovering beyng.
Right.
And basic experiences, and the more you risk not listening to their stupid articles about their stupid movies.
Yes, right, exactly.
Language and the identity is not just there. Identity has its hands around your neck.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not just sitting there and you can go over there. It's after you. It's in your head.
Yeah.
Rent free, as they say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not even in there rent free. You're actually paying it rent.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm paying for it.
For it to be in your head.
Totally.
Yeah. It's charging you.
Yes.
To be in your head.
I'm in debt.
Yeah. And you need to understand the ways in which it's trying to get at you. And they are many, 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 many.
Yeah.
So part of liberation is figuring out all the many ways identity is trying to get at you. It's coming in your ears, it's coming up your nose, it's coming in your mouth, it's coming in your butt, it's coming in your eyes, it's crawling into your skin, it's getting in your hair, it's in every word you use, it's in every thought you have, it's in every value you place on things, it's in every judgment you make, it's in every feeling. It's like,
Yeah, totally. So
it is an invasive species.
We practice bearing silence.
Yes. It's late.
Yes.
Right?
Or that whole full paragraph, but we don't need to read it again. Oh my God, it's really late.
What full paragraph?
Instead, it is the holding itself back of restraint against the hesitant self-withholding and the truth clearing of concealment of the plight from which arises the necessity of the decision.
Amazing. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks for joining us for the Leaping Choya podcast. For more information, visit leapingchoya.com and be sure and follow us on socials. Until next time.